Alright, I'm finally doing it. I'm finally making a guide to Season 11 Kalista. I have been procrastinating this video for months. Also, I have a good opportunity to do it right now because I am lagging like shit in League. I haven't been able to stream because it's so laggy to play. I haven't been able to do ranked. It's really annoying and frustrating, so I might as well make videos about it instead of actually play it. Since I made a video about itemizing, it's only right to continue that and make a video about Kalista herself. So there will be multiple parts to this video. I'll leave timestamps at the description, if I remember, to each part. So it'll be arranged like this. First, we're doing combos for Kalista and just fundamentals. Next, we're following up with runes. We've talked about items in my previous video, which I hope I'll link in the description. And after that, we'll get into gameplay and how you should play Kalista. So the first part of it, let's go. So to begin this part, I recommend that you should know what Kalista does, just her basic abilities. So you should know how her passive works, all the debuffs, her Q, W, E, just all the basic stuff. I don't want to get over what all of these abilities do. What I will go over are smaller things that are not written in these abilities. We'll start with the passive. Firstly, it doesn't say which targets will miss. It says miss if a target leaves vision, but this does not apply to wards. Control wards, trinkets, these will still work. Like Jin traps, Nidalee traps, anything that goes invisible, mushrooms. You can hit them even if they go invisible because they are not enemies. They are, but they're not like enemy units. So yeah, that's pretty important. And this is also wrong. Attacks cannot be cancelled because they can. I'll do it right now. I'm winding up. Oh, the attack still came out. I have to redo it. But you can cancel your attack animation with E. Look, my attack was coming out, but I cancelled it with E. So you can cancel it, but cancelling it the normal way, you can't. Next up, I'll go over E, W, then Q, because it's more easy to explain. So E, this max range that it shows, this really isn't the max range. I'll show you right now. So, this target is right here. If I'm standing right here, I should say right here, this is my max range. So if I Q, and E, this is about my max range. But this isn't actually my actual max range. This is only the range of my first enemy. I can hit enemies who are further away, like right here. I'll go back here. I'll put an ally here just so I can mark the position. Like right here. So I'll attack that. Go back here. You see how it hit that even though it's not in range? Because your E, this only shows the range of the first enemy. As long as there's at least one enemy in this range with the stack, you can E quite a bit further. I don't know the exact range, but it's a little bit further. And this is something really important to get used to. This is like something I see a lot of new Kalista players do. They flash E because they can't get in range when they could have easily just auto-attacked the minion and E. Because the minion would be the first target in your E range, and if the enemy champion is out of range, it'll still work. I'll try it even further away, see if that works. Okay, that one doesn't work. So the range is like this long. So yeah, that's her E. Her W does have a glitch. So if you're attacking and you use your W mid-attack, your W might not go the correct direction. And it might not go the correct length you put in. So try to avoid using a W in the middle of your attack animation. And another thing about its passive. The passive will give the kill gold to Kalista if the W's damage kills it, which is 18% max health. Which means that the best example of this is Thresh. Thresh's E lets his auto attack do a lot of damage. That's why if you auto attack something and Thresh tries to take it for you, your W needs to kill it, but Thresh's auto will do a lot. And your W won't kill, and then your Thresh's auto attack damage comes in and kills it. It'll look like it's supposed to work, but Thresh gets the gold. So basically, your W needs to be the one that kills it with the damage, not your ally. Because it calculates your W's damage first, and then your ally's damage. It's kind of finicky how it works, and I don't like that, but that's just how it is. And Q doesn't really have that many glitches. You can auto-cancel with Q. You can hop twice in a row with low attack speed. Like right here, I'll show you. Jumping. I jumped a little further. That's just how it works. That's it. And your ult range. This is also a pretty cool trick. Your ult range is the exact same range as your E range. And I'll just bind to him to show you. And I'll put an enemy right next to him. Oh, that kills it. Put it right here. So I'll put a stack on him. Now watch. I'll walk into range. And I'm literally just very close. I can't ult. What? Okay, weird. But usually your E range and your R range is exactly the same, and you can use that as an indicator to ult. And now for some tips and tricks you should really get used to. The first one being a double rend. And it's really simple. Really, what you do is you auto attack, and you're E in the middle of your auto attack. You know you did it right when there's 2 rend sounds. Like that. If there's 1 rend sound like this, that means you did it wrong. Now this may look like not that useful, but this does a lot of things that are very important. And the first I'll show you right now. And the first being, you can use it to reset in different ways. I could really show it is by using the small grumps. The small krugs, I mean. So here. Put an enemy right here. So look, if I wanna reset off of the krug, let's say enemy's running away, like here, and I wanna reset. I'll try to auto E, but look, my E goes on cooldown. Okay, I have auto refresh on. My E would usually go on cooldown. But let me just get this one low so I can show you what I mean. So my attack is 109. Okay, my auto attack would kill it usually here. So this is just, imagine this is a small krug. I can just do a rend reset, a double rend. And my E will come back up. Now usually my auto attack would kill it. But since I eat in the middle of my auto, I get the reset because they're double rended. And this is a very important thing to do. Your double rend can also cancel, you can also cancel the animation of your rend. So if you're walking and you rend, you stop for a second. But what you can do is you can E in the middle of your attack animation, and you can rend while you're jumping. And this is very key when you're doing it in the early game. Late game it doesn't matter as much because your jumps are already so fast that it doesn't really matter. So that's pretty much everything that's important about your E. Yeah. Your W, the max range of it is actually quite important. From here, you can go all the way to this bush. From around this area. You can click all the way to the bush. And this is quite useful because it'll give you vision through here if we use it here. And if we use it from here, it'll give you vision all the way to the river. And use it to very important spots. Another spot you can do is just go here and then click on the wolves. If we're doing it from this side, you can do the wolves. Or you can do it right here if you're doing it from blue side, in case they're roaming. And you can also use this one I just showed if you're pushed up. Or if you don't want to go all the way there, you can just go here and W. Same thing. These are some pretty good spots for your W. And your Q. I think we all know how this one works. Let me just go get something. You hit like the red buff. We all know if we can use our Q to transfer red stacks. Which is pretty useful. But it's mostly for show. I'll be honest with you, it's not that useful. Avoid using it unless you just want to show off. Like I can do a bunch of damage like that, that's 1700 damage. But it's mostly for show. If you're stacking it up on a large minion or like a grump or a buff, it's so incredibly obvious for enemies, they'll just walk away and let your rend stacks fall off. So yeah, just don't do it that much. And yeah, that's pretty much all the important things you need to know about Kalista. And oh yeah, finally, I should probably say this. You can use your Q to hop over walls, and your Q hop is slightly longer than your normal hops. A good way to show this is right here. Let me just go here. This wall is very difficult to hop with using a normal auto attack. I'll try. It's possible, but it's quite difficult. I'll try going back. Okay, failed. Try again. I failed. I'll use a champion. It's very difficult, but for Q, it's very easy because my Q hops slightly further. Okay, I missed that. Okay, that's not very smart. Yeah, I don't have boots on, that's why it's so much more difficult. If I had boots on, it would be easier. But your Q hop range is slightly longer than your auto attack hop range, and keep that in mind. You can actually kind of see it. I'll do a hop like this. Then watch the hop with the Q. It's almost double the range. The range stays the same because the hop range of your Q doesn't matter with your boots, I think. Don't take my word for it. And that's about everything I can say about Kalista for tips, tricks, and fundamentals. On to the next part. So the next part, runes. This one is mostly personal preference. What I'm giving you is guidelines. You can honestly do whatever you find is comfortable. And this rune page right here, this is the most common rune page for Kalista. It's pretty much the most used and the most consistent, honestly. Hail of Blades is just really good just because you can triple auto E, which is insane amount of damage. The enemy can't really react to it because it's so fast. And the only way an enemy can react to it is with point and click CC, and that's why Pantheon is such a good matchup against Kalista because she can't go Hail of Blades that easily. She needs to take lethal tempo or press the attack just because she can't make use out of this rune. So this is good in like 95% of situations. The other 5% you can really do other stuff. Taste of Blood all the time. These two are both garbage. Please don't even try. I know Sudden Impact sounds amazing, but Taste of Blood will give you much more value in the long run because this gives you lethality and magic penetration, and you're never gonna use the magic pen. If it give you only lethality, it would give you a little more than 7 just because it's only one stat, like 9 lethality or 10 lethality. Then this would be quite a bit better, but Taste of Blood just helps you out a lot. Eyeball Collection, because Eyeball Collection is just really good. You can go Zombie Ward if you trust in your support. And, you know, if your support gives you the wards, if he lets you hit it. Next up, Ravenous Hunter or Ultimate Hunter. You can go Ravenous Hunter like 95% of the time if you really trust your support, like you're in comms, your support knows how to ult. Ultimate Hunter is a better choice. Just because you're an ADC, you don't exactly need the healing. You should just be going for full-on raw damage. Next up, Precision just works really well with Kalista. I highly recommend always keeping Alacrity. Bloodline's getting nerfed quite hard next patch, and I don't recommend using it because it doesn't give you any stats in the early game. And that's where I just don't like Bloodline. I used to take it before, but that was when I was in gold and people couldn't punish my my lack of alacrity. My early game becomes quite a bit worse without this attack speed with this and Hail of Blades. Triumph is good. I personally prefer Overheal, but Triumph's good if you want to start scaling really fast because it gives you some extra gold and you can take more aggressive fights. Overheal's better in the late game against assassins because this, combined with Bloodthirster and Death Stance with the GA, this gives you a lot of survivability. Coup de Grace is also really good because this will amplify your E damage a lot in the early game. Late game, with the amount of AD you'll have, you'll usually be killing people with E before they reach 40% health, especially squishier champions. You can auto 3 times with Halo Blades, QE, and that's usually a kill on anyone who has no armor or any defensive items. Cut down is good when you're facing tanks. Don't take last stand. If you're low on HP, you're not supposed to be fighting. You're an ADC. Some people do take presence of mind. I think it's pretty bad, especially next season, because you don't really need the mana. Mana is not that important because your E only costs 30 mana. You get mana refund if you're maxing E all the way up to full mana refund at max rank. Your Q is the only thing that gets more mana hungry every rank, but also it's not that mana hungry. It's 50 to 70 mana, so it's pretty okay. And don't go Tenacity. Tenacity doesn't do much. If they have a lot of CC and you don't want to take Cleanse or QSS, I guess, but Alacrity is just a billion times better. Another thing you can do is take Precision Primary with Press D Attack, Lethal Tempo. Or if you have a lot of confidence in yourself, Conqueror. Why? Because Conqueror got nerfed. Before you could use Runan's Hurricane and get 3 stacks of Conqueror per auto. Now that's not a thing. And because it's getting nerfed for ranged champions even more next patch. I'm pretty sure, at least the healing is. Press the attack and Lethal Tempo are just better. Because Press the attack will amplify your E damage after 3 autos. Lethal Tempo is good for team fights. Follow it up with any of these 3, whichever you like. I prefer one of these 2, usually Overheal with Alacrity, or Bloodline if you're taking Lethal Tempo. This is the only time you could, because Lethal Tempo is good for long fights and it kind of replaces Alacrity if you want to scale into late game. Cut down or Coop depending on the team comp. And then here, this is the only reason you'll ever take Precision. It gives you a lot of flexibility, because the Domination, you only take Domination for Halo Blades. These runes are garbage. Honestly, you don't need those. It's better to go Sorcery with Gathering Storm and Nimbus Cloak just because it's so consistent. If you're caught out, you flash out, you run. Use Bork and just get the hell out of there. Bork active will be gone next patch, as well as Nimbus Cloak getting, I think, nerfed again. So just keep that in mind. If you want a replacement for Nimbus, I highly recommend Absolute Focus, considering how much lifesteal your builds will usually contain, especially with the new Ravenous Hydra. It's a lot of healing on that item. You can take Resolve for Bone Plating into very engage heavy teams, or Second Wind into very poke heavy teams. And Revitalize for a healing enchanter support or a shielding support. Unflinching for CC and engage. I don't recommend Overgrowth, but if you want, you could go for it. These 4 runes are pretty bad. Don't take any of these. Maybe Demolish, but don't. Inspiration is, I would consider, the worst, because a lot of these don't help her much. You'll never really need Hex Slash because you can Q over walls. You'll never really need Perfect Timing because GA is usually your last item. There are just better items before GA. You don't need CDR, you don't need the movement speed while mid-combat, because movement speed doesn't affect how you kite. It's boots that increase your jump range, not movement speed. Time Rep Tonic, you're never gonna buy Corrupting Pot. Refill, I guess it's kind of useful, but don't. Minion Dematerializer, your wave clear is pretty good. Futures Market, maybe. Boots are just the disadvantage. You're rushing boots first, don't take this. And yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about runes. So, to begin, I should clarify the 3 types of bot lanes you'll be playing with and against. So, those are Heavy Engage, Sustain, and Poke. And all 3 of these are very different. Poke is usually a very long-ranged champion, ADC, with a poke mage. Enchanters are usually, like, sustain lanes are usually filled with enchanter supports with hard scaling late game ADCs. And engage bot lanes are usually early game aggressive supports, ADCs, with very early game heavy engaged tanks like Leona or Nautilus. So Kalista fits into engage usually, If engage doesn't work for her, poke isn't terrible because of your Halo Blades and Q. And the worst scenario is when you have an enchanter. Enchanters don't go that well with Kalista, but if you have an enchanter, it's not terrible, especially if it's Lulu or Janna, because they both help your kit a lot. I highly recommend avoiding Yuumi, just because Yuumi is just really annoying to lane with. Your W will almost never be used, like the passive part of it. You'll never be able to ult Yuumi, therefore you're more or less forced to bound to someone else on your team, which is really annoying. And that's why I usually ban Yuumi, because I hate playing with Yuumi, and if Yuumi is on the enemy team and they have any hard scaling champions, I'm usually fucked. So look to play with heavy engage supports. Poke supports aren't terrible, avoid enchanters usually. So there's also a pretty important triangle you should know about, the matchup triangle. So poke beats engage. Poke will just completely ruin engage at level 1 and usually level 2, and make their engage at level 3 kind of bad because it's really predictable and the jungler can usually react. And engage beats sustain because sustain is more about short-term shielding, not long-term, like long extended fights. If it was poke, sustain wins, and that's the triangle. Poke beats engage, engage beats sustain, and sustain beats poke. And you should play around this triangle and pick accordingly. But that doesn't mean that poke can't beat sustain. It just completely depends on the champions, the players, the junglers, the mid laners. But this is just a general idea of how matchups are. So let's assume you're in a favorable situation. You have a good engage support. You're playing against a sustain lane like Twitch Yuumi. How should you play the lane? Well, you should be playing really aggressive. I'm talking like level 1. You run up to them, triple auto, E, walk back, CS, go back in when your Halo Blades up. Doesn't matter if your E isn't up. You wait for Halo Blades again, go in, auto, 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 E, and continue until they have to recall before they're even level 2. That's pretty hard to pull off. That's the ideal situation. With the good support, that's possible. But usually you're aiming to deny them a bit of CS. Level 2, you're trying to kill them, because their level 2 is usually surprisingly weak. So after you get like 1 or 2 kills, like a 600 gold lead, the lane is usually won from there, because the ADC kind of loses its purpose early game and has to wait 30 minutes to do anything. And that's how you beat a very favorable matchup. You destroy them early game, you get a huge lead, you try to end the game fast before the ADC starts scaling. So how about if you're into a really bad matchup with a really bad team? Let's say you got a Soraka support against, let's say, Pantheon Samira, something that's quite meta in Season 10, will probably be kind of relevant in Season 11 as well. What do? Well, you basically don't bind to your Soraka. There's no point to binding to her, you bind to your jungler. You max EQ, you don't put a single point into W, and you play the lane passively. Take Lethal Tempo or Fleet. Yes, I didn't mention Fleet in the runes part because it's so rare to take it, but in situations like these, it's not a terrible idea. You play really passively because as Samira gets a kill, she'll start scaling and 1v9ing your team. So their lane is going to automatically push because they're trying to engage on you. You can't last hit and they're last hitting, so automatically the wave pushes to you. You use your jungler, you use your mid laner, you try to 3-man their bot lane, 4-man their bot lane. Just try to play with a numbers advantage because that's the only way you'll win in a bad matchup like that. So that's how you play the early game. Look for favorable matchups, play according to your support and their team, and just overall watch the jungler, watch the mid laner, watch TPs, use their W effectively in the early game to spot out your jungler, either on the scuttle or their buffs or their large monsters, whatever it is. That's the early game. In the mid game completely depends on how fed you are. If you have Blade of the Ruined King, Runan's Hurricane, and your full boots done at 20-ish minutes, you are considered fed and you should be 1v9ing. I mean, in Season 11, that's more like a shield bow, Blade of the Ruined King, and boots. So yeah, if you have those 3 items in the early game, not early, in the mid game, you should be able to force fights, take objectives, and just try to build up a bigger lead to end the game. Because her late game is honestly not that good compared to a lot of other ADCs, and I'll explain why. So, this is if you're really fed. You should try to get your lead, keep your lead, get objectives such as turrets, Baron, Rift Herald, Drake, whatever is up. You force it because your mid game is surprisingly strong if you are fed. Similar to Lucian and Draven, if they're fed in the mid game, they are a monster to deal with. And if you're behind in the mid game, let's say you just finished your shield bow at 15 minutes alongside your boots. That means you're quite behind. What should you be doing here? Well, your best option is let your support roam and help your team while you CS close to your side. And close to a side which you think is not warded. What I mean is, make sure you're not going too far past the river. And make sure that there's at least 1 or 2 wards near bushes near you. So you basically CS very slowly because you're kind of just fucked. You messed up your early game. Your best hope is to get a good engage with your ult, because your ult will remain the same no matter how fed or how behind you are. Your ult is an insane engage for your team. It's a very strong knock-up. It's a disengage for your support if they're caught out. It's a bait. There's a lot of things you can do with her ult. Use it to your advantage. Her ult is her most important tool if you're behind because it can set up so many plays. It's like an Ornn ult. That's how strong it is in a team fight. But it has a built-in QSS for your support. It has an escape rope, literally. It's so good. So that's the mid game. And late game, you're kind of fucked. Because she is a short-ranged ADC, 525 range. Why is that bad? Because most short-range ADCs fall off in the late game. Except Vayne and Kalista. The only reason these two don't fall off is because they have invis. They have a lot of ways to survive, and they have very strong mixed damage. Vayne does true damage, max health, while going invisible with Q in the middle of her ult, and Kalista can also go invisible, do a bunch of mixed physical and magic damage, and have a lot of survivability with Ravenous Hunter, Bloodline, her ult, and just a lot of damage. And you'll see that every late game ADC that isn't Vayne or Kalista is usually some super long range immobile hyper carry. Kalista is not meant to hyper carry in the late game. Try to end the game by 30 minutes. 35 at most. And past that, you're kind of screwed. So, if you are behind in the late game, you are just a split push bot and an ult bot. That's your only reason to exist. You will ult, you will auto attack their strongest hyper carry, whether it be their ADC, their mid laner, their jungler, whoever is doing the most damage. You try to kill them, go for a 1-for-1 or 1-for-2 trade, because you're so behind and range is so short, there's not much else you can do. So late game, you're just kind of useless, but since you're an ADC and you build ADC items, especially in Season 11, you will still have some usefulness. But compared to other ADCs, you're kind of bad. So yeah, that's the guide to Kalista. I hope this helped you. I know I didn't get to give much gameplay example, but getting an example of every situation, like when I'm behind, when I'm ahead, it's kind of difficult, especially with this ping right now. I can't really play on 75 plus ping, and it's not even consistent. It's fluctuating. It goes up to 100 a few times. So yeah, I hope this guide helped. I hope you learned something new, or at least got a refresh on some memories you may have lost about Kalista. You know, all those double rend, triple rending is also pretty fun. When you Q right after your auto attack and E, love it. So yeah, good luck on your Kalista games in Season 11, and I'll see you guys next time.